So we had a reputation. They came with donuts.
Coffee?
Thank you, Veronica.
It's leftover, so I'm not.
Hola, necesito practicar mi español.
Practica conmigo.
These are easy meetings. All we have to do is sit here and listen.
That was pretty good Spanish, Mac.
Was it?
I thought
It-
so.
It's my only complete Spanish sentence.
That was very good.
It's not bad, right?
I thought it was pretty good. You need to practice.
Yeah.
That's what, I got it. Very clear.
So, hi, Veronica.
Hi, Veronica.
Hi. So I was asking Mac if you guys have ever been in such intense sort of an interview process like this. You have?
Well,
Like
remember, I was
people and,
commissioned when Mario applied.
yeah, but you on the other side. Like
Oh, have
you
I?
be in the,
Oh.
yeah, interview.
As a candidate.
Applicant, as a candidate, yeah.
Well, I've never held a government position. Yes, I've been on panel interviews, yeah,
Mhm.
Really?
but never never in a public setting. That's different.
They're very different,
Yeah.
very different.
Although
No, but even, I mean, it feels so poor, it's like a different setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's because you're talking to so many different people.
Yeah. intense.
I've been in interviews with more than one person. I've been through the interviews where you go from office to office to office.
Oh,
Yeah.
same day? You're
Yes.
exhausted at the end.
Yeah, I went, one time I was flown to New York to interview with L'Oreal corporate offices in New York. And it started in like with an HR person, and then it went through the department up to the highest levels. And you had to kind of clear each level to make it to the next one.
Oh,
Because it was very obvious, like, at a certain point, they're gonna stop this if they're not interested in me. But I went through
Yeah.
the whole day and it was like, it was exhausting,
wow. Yeah.
but I didn't want the job. So,
What do you mean? What were you there for?
Practice.
because they called my boss and said, Mac won't interview with us. And he said, just go, because they're kind of like insulted that you won't. I'm like, okay. So I went and it was a free night in New York, but it's fun to interview for a job at that level when you don't want it.
Did you just show up with a t-shirt and?
No,
slip
no,
ups
no.
and you're like,
I took it very
"Guys,
seriously and I prepared and I was ready. But then I turned it down. At the end, they offered it to me and I turned it down.
Ah.
So it was fun going into it knowing the pressure really isn't here.
So you asked for like twice as much and you're like,
No, I just told them I'm not interested. And they said, well, we're gonna do all these things. And I said,
and this was with,
no.
I was thinking, I'm like, after the whole day.
Let me turn my mic off.
Matt, can you hear me? Shantae, you can hear me? Just checking for audio.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. And I do have is that you, Shantae?
It is.
I do have hi, I have a presentation.
Okay.
So I do need to share screen.
Okay.
Can you help
Give me
with
a
that?
few
Let me know.
moments and I will set it up for you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Hey, Christina.
Hi, Mac. How are you?
Lovely, thank you. Welcome to Biscayne Park, sorta.
I wish I was there.
At least you get to see the log cabin.
That's right. Truly. Are you remote today? Oh, I see you there.
Yes.
Say again?
So he just is trying.
I didn't see you at first. You have a darker shirt on.
I
Hey,
want him
Linda.
in the country. I don't want him in the country. I'd rather
Oh,
just send.
Village Fall.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's it. You'll
That's the
have
only
to.
place,
Yeah.
'cause I don't-
Oh. No, because I was trying to read it and I just can't see the, I can't, there's no contrast. Hello? Let me, go in there. That. Oh. Wait. Hmm. Oh, thank you. No, no. I would love to say that I can do that. No.
just FYI, I'm on Zoom. I can't hear anyone.
Because I didn't
Sorry
have my
about that.
mic on, sorry.
That's okay.
We're trying to keep things from you.
While they're talking, we'll talk.
I was like, where's the chat? I want to say it in the
That was
chat.
it,
There's
right?
no, I don't think we have a chat on here.
I tried that before.
I messed up.
When
I
it was
should've-
muted last commission meeting.
I just have to raise my hand.
Yeah.
Veronica, we were talking about an AI option. Wait, is she still there? Mine froze now.
Uh-oh.
He's there.
I'm here. Oh, although I can see that there's some coming in and out. It could be the connections.
Yeah,
Muted.
it's
Yeah,
not.
we should probably let everybody know about that. Shantae, about the spottiness and such, just as a. It's what's
interesting
happening
is-
here.
Thinking.
All the people who are zooming in are fine. It's those of us in the log cabin. So it's clearly
guess it-
our internet.
So I guess that's a good thing. At least they're
Yeah.
able to watch
Yeah,
and listen.
Exactly. So they're all good.
Yeah, my understanding from the email we got was that Village Hall and the log cabin had some connectivity issues earlier on in the week. So I'm kind of expecting this a little bit.
From listening to a lot of the YouTube videos from prior commission meetings to catch up on everything, right? The sound quality, I'm wondering if we can't connect some of the microphones to your laptops or something, or maybe those little readers that will show you all visually where your voice is at. They're like little read indicators. Connect those to the microphones or something. It's great seeing everyone's faces on the Zooms, right? Even though they're sitting at the table, they're all each connected from their
Yeah.
laptop as well.
It's
Maybe
that
we
if
can connect the
they,
microphones.
if they unmute on the computer, then it gives a lot of feedback on the line. So whenever we're there present in the log cabin, we need to actually mute the computer microphone.
Not
Otherwise it
working.
interacts there with the
I'm
mics
gonna
on hand, I think.
Get out of here.
Right, that's why I wonder
Again?
how it'll connect, if it can connect to the
I'm gonna
microphones.
restart my.
I wanted to get lavalier mics. So when we're turning and talking to each other, you're still pick up your voices because we have to talk directly into these mics for them to work. And
Mhm.
Very
I like sitting
directly.
up.
I
Mhm.
wonder what our sound system setup is. Maybe we could connect it in some capacity to that, you know? I'm sure there's a way. Just to find it.
Well, okay, shall we?
Where there's a will.
Right? What do we
Well,
need, Mac? What do we need?
Barring any further problems, I think we should probably just get moving. Okay. Where did it go?
I'm restarting the computer and see this way.
All right, so we are here for our second manager candidate workshop. Today's July 6th, 2023. Madam Clerk, would you please, well, there is no roll on this one, but would you please do the roll for us?
Mayor Groth,
Here.
Vice Mayor Gonzalez,
Here.
Commissioner Amsler.
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Commissioner Olivera.
Here.
Zoom. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, so beginning with our first candidate interview. Good evening, Christine. Well, I guess good afternoon to you out there, right?
Good evening.
So Christina, do you mind if I call you by your first name?
Yes, please, John.
Great, Christina, thanks so much. Well, so thank you very much for being with us here this evening to entertain our questions. I'm just going to let you know, and you may already be aware of what the format's going to look like. So what we're going to do is each of the commissioners is going to have about 10 minutes to ask you a few questions. And with the way we have it set up for the hour time slot is there will be an additional 10 minutes at the end for commissioners to ask follow-up questions or for you to ask us any questions that you may want to bring to our attention. So that's the way that we've been conducting them. And without further ado, do you have any questions before we get started?
No,
Okay, so we kind of established a procedure yesterday on, so I guess we'll just follow that on the order of this. So Commissioner Kennedy, would you like to get us started, please?
Sure. So, hi, Christina. Nice to see you. We wish you were here with us, but it's nice to see you in our Zoom room. They asked me to go first because I had prepared those topics in advance, and we understand that you have a presentation for us. So we would like you to be able to present that to us first. And just to remind folks who are listening in, rather than asking questions tonight, I presented 2 topics to each candidate last week to give them time to prepare. There are 2 separate topics. One is basically, how would you implement our new strategic plan, short, mid, long term, if you were to be selected as manager? You have 5 minutes to answer that question. I'd like you to answer that one first, if you don't mind, unless you want to change the order. And then you have 3 minutes to answer, to address a separate topic, and that would be, if you're hired, you'll be landing sort of midway in our budgeting process. What are your concerns? What concerns, opportunities do you have with our budget if you were to be here for the tail end of that process, looking into fiscal 24, particularly as the budget relates to the strategic plan? So which ones of those would you like to address first?
me, are you speaking to
Yeah,
me now
yeah.
that it's the strategic plan for certain? Yes,
Yes. Which of those topics would you like to address first?
the strategic plan one.
Wonderful. So you have 5 minutes for that, and you can start whenever you're ready.
I do need share screen permission, please.
You should be able to, Shantae says.
Host disabled participant screen sharing.
There it is. It looks like you're trying to share something. There you go.
Host.
Multiple, Shantae.
Mm,
There you go. Now you're set up, Christina.
Okay, wonderful. All right, thank you for the opportunity to present, and let's begin. I reiterated the questions from Commissioner Kennedy and included the other available village reference material. We have emphasizing the village manager's accountability to the strategic plan in section 1 here. Discipline of execution. In respect for our ever-changing environment, all contents herein are subject to further development where necessary and appropriate. We must continue to be malleable, agile, and adaptive to the desires and needs and realities of our community. Execution has to be a part of our organization strategy and its goals. It is the missing link between aspirations and results. The leader must be in charge of getting things done by running 3 core processes. These are the substance of execution, and leaders cannot delegate these regardless of the size of the organization. That is the people, the strategic, and the operations processes. How Biscayne Park executes those 3. The operational process. So I will articulate the operational process, though these will inevitably be built into a visual graphic. I have started ours here, but here's what one would look like in Endgame. So I'll just go through leadership meeting. It's a weekly, everyone opens with a positive segue, reports their department scorecard. These are our key performance indicators of the agency. A lot of these are already present in our pre-existing commission reports from Mario, and I believe we'll be able to identify additional quality measures to include, and we will complete strategic objectives through our project plans. We will be prompted to add, change, and remove our KPIs through those project plans as well. Though some KPIs will not be changing likely as well. Provide ROC updates. So this is those strategic objectives, those quarterly strategic plan objectives and tasks that we previously agreed on for completion that come directly from the agency project plans. We'll also assign to-dos, and we'll identify, discuss, and solve our items and challenges from our agency required reports, our standard operating procedures, our projects, and our people. What is the agency required report? That's a tracker that reminds our team of their minimum necessary items to be done per state, federal, and county municipal code as well. And they also compose their all agency cascading message. This too is added prior to the meeting, and then ultimately is emailed out to all direct reports so that we're providing a consistent message across the agency. All agency required reports are expected to be built into all of the staff's standard operating procedures. So department stand-ups are done daily, and those are led by the department directors. The teams hold bi-weekly planning meetings. That's 1.5 hours long. They determine their availability for each of the staff, deduct operating or recurring items, if you will, deduct their PTO and their meetings that are in the coming 2 weeks, and they use the remaining hours to allocate time towards the tasks that are coming out of the current project plans, and allocate time to compose future project plans into that to-do list. Then they prioritize that list of to-dos for use in the daily stand-up meetings. During daily stand-up meetings, which are 10 minutes long, they the progress is reported on to-dos and any emergencies that have arisen. They are thus using this time to manage emerging needs, touch base on routine operations, and progress strategic items while tracking our personnel, strategic, and operational performance. Leaders report these performance metrics to the personnel productivity report. That's like a Google form, and is quarterly exported to Excel for use in the leadership team when I do quarterly evals. But ideally, the leaders are doing it with their staff's quarterly reviews as well. From these two procedures, we're truly connecting our operations or our recurring duties to our strategic implementation, which are our objectives, strategic implementation objectives and tasks. And objectives and tasks are directly pulled from those project plans we're talking about, as well as connecting our people, so this is execution is in the name of our mission, striving towards our vision and making our core values integral to how we conduct ourselves. Note that these meetings, coupled with our strategic plan, with our standard operating procedures, enables our staff to better enforce our municipal code and any necessary items in big and small ways, from enforcement of those visible cans that are out on the streets to more efficient and ultimately more effective functioning, which is critical given our limited resource engine and slim budget. It also keeps this consistent and inevitably adds funds in our coffers. So the strategic process, now that we're connecting all the dots, is objectives coming right out of that strategic plan. Our community has developed our goals and our strategies. We need to do those objectives and those tasks. Objectives are project plans. They are created, reviewed, and revised throughout every year for current and future execution. Projects must be SMART. That's specific, measurable, attainable, accountable, relevant, time-bound. Here's an example of each, given our strategic plan. Project workbooks contain all of the information for each project. They are electronic living documents throughout the project and can become very detailed, sometimes including upwards of 50 documents like RFPs and Gantt charts, which are linked and added to the project workbook folder, which is maybe like a folder or a link to some software, based on our project complexity and key stakeholder preferences. The project plans are part of the project workbooks and are required when an objective under the strategic plan is being completed. The agency actively works on 5 or less project plans at any given time only. Key features: document is dynamically responsive. So if the project is, if this project was small, only requires name of project, tracking those SMART items, the reason for change, available options, proposed solutions, scope, which is your scope and and ultimately your tasks from that strategic plan, the cost and timeline for completion, and a prompt to add, change, and or remove from any standard operating procedures that are applicable, and to update the agency required reports, which we just talked about, and also provides for a pause moment. Does this uphold our mission? Does this uphold our vision? Does it uphold our core values? Yes.
Christina, I'm going to interrupt there for a second.
Yes.
You've gone over your 5-minute time limit for the answer.
Oh,
I appreciate
excuse
the
me.
thorough response.
That's
And
all right.
And I'm hoping you're going to email this to
I
Shantae so she
will.
can share it
I
with all of
will.
us, because I would like to read this myself more thoroughly, but we need to jump to the other topic now,
That's all right.
which is the budget application.
That's all right. Okay, so budget. The budgeting process spells out I will then slim down. The operating plan provides the path for meeting right here. Operating plans are typically based on a budget that has been previously prepared. This is backward. The budget must be the financial expression of the operating plan and the underlying plans generated by the agency's components, rather than the other way around. So also, a strategic plan can provide structure to the budget process by crosswalking budgetary requests and choices back to the strategic goals. So in both of these contemporary and Socratic reads, you're seeing that it's important for the strategic plan to dictate to the budget. So immediate actions, ask the team. I would, for this year, with the minimum amount of time, ask the team to identify most critical items necessary now for the journey forward. Work with Paul to establish precedents, propose contingencies where appropriate. At implementation, reassign funds as appropriate, and minimize the implementation of initiatives that may disrupt the coming year's budgetary and strategic process. I would also ensure Paul and I, along with the team, collaborate well to ensure that to guarantee that the processes of strategic initiatives are driving budgetary decisions and it's actionable and comprehensive for the coming year as we set up for that following fiscal year of 2025. This year and subsequent years thereafter, though, I want to make certain to articulate will be developing the budgeting. I expect to develop the budget plan with Paul if one is not already composed, use the strategic plan to drive budgeting, compose an Excel for tracking progress and recurring items for proper budgeting in future years. Mario noted in last year's budgeting meetings, projects haven't been done and they need to be, and that wages are usually flatline or only increased. So my approach has been to propose, just so you know, in the past, my approach for budgeting has always been to propose contingencies of 5 to 20%, depending on the line item, and focus on the realities of our situation. I am keeping millage consistent for I propose keeping millage consistent for the coming year, focus on grants and efficiency measures and productivity analyses. What gets measured gets done. And so, building restricted reserves, I would focus on as well, with the goal of dropping the millage in the year after while getting more done and increasing our reserves. Note that I don't know what I don't know, so I will need to assess our current position and deliberate with key stakeholders to determine if we will be capable of proposing to drop the millage for the year after next while still getting more done and increasing our reserves. The annual budget presentation, I would keep everything consistent that Mario did, and these are the revisions to the process that I would propose.
Very good, thank you. So
Yes.
I appreciate the detail.
Yes.
And I would love to see a copy of that because
I will
wanna
be
go-
sending it to all of you.
I want to go through it and dig through a little bit more, but thank you
Please, I
for
hope you do.
presenting it I know I really plan to. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So in my remaining, let's call it, you have about 90 seconds here. I just want to ask you a quick question and have you
Sure.
answer something that's a little softer around the edges than the information I asked you to provide. Can you describe to us, based on your understanding of the village, and I know you've done a lot of research and watched meetings, and you've really, from our conversations, you really are taking your time on this. Other than Biscayne Park being our home, and I'm talking about residents, why do you think Biscayne Park is such a special place to the people who live here?
It's a special place because it clearly already has a foundation of social equity. That's the business term for it, right? Or the government sector term for it. But really, we have a solid foundation of that fulfillment of a community, and we need to keep and foster that. And so, I mean what I say when I've spoken with all of you regarding what my expectations are, and that is, living and leading in the community I'm in. And so, yes, short term, ICMA credential takes 3 years. I really want to learn some of these different the functions of government that I haven't had an opportunity to partake in, but I have led an agency, and I am, I believe, more than capable of very humbly doing so. And so longer term, I'd be looking at living there. Certainly my intention is, see that I'm an agent for change or a supportive pillar for something, dependent on which is necessary in my community, and see the fruits of my labor really come to fruition. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Commissioner. Christina, our next commissioner up will be Commissioner Amsler.
Hi, Christina.
Hello, Commissioner
Hello.
Amsler.
Nice to see you. Thank you so much for a detailed presentation. There is a lot of theory here, so I'm going to go into practicality a little bit more. I would love to see, how do you, or hear from you, how would you manage this challenge of bringing this to life when you have a very limited amount of resources, meaning amount of FTEs. You have residents to connect with. You have 5 members of a commission to stay connected with. And we are about 0.7 of a mile square feet. I'm sorry, in terms of size. So hoping that you get the chance as well to walk around and see progress, effectively see progress. So how do you balance it all?
So I did send previously a startup plan to John. I hope that you've all had an opportunity to see those quarterly expectations for the first year, so that we're setting ourselves up for success by building out those plans and those processes and those procedures. And that is going to ensure that the years to come are successful in execution. And so, you know, yes, there's a visual aid here. This is a detailed breakdown, but here is a shorthand visual aid. I strongly encourage all of you to see it because, of course, I think it is, you know, it is to the point of what you need. Yes, it's not 5 minutes long, but it's what you need, what we need, the community needs. And so I hope that addressed your question. Did it?
Yes, and I
for you?
think, you know, it's such a big job and I was trying to get, you know, what do you do first? So you have it all lined up. And I think the challenge comes,
Oh.
you know, come a hurricane season and we need to figure out where we use the pump and how, you know, which addresses are being effective. Weekends are going to be needed, maybe after hours are going to be needed, events are going to happen. And that all happens in the midst of making this plan, which is a lot of theory, which I appreciate, come to life as well. So how do you assess the staff is ready to take on of this? And how, basically my question is, how do you know we're doing the best we can with what we've got?
Right. So I really manage by walking around, seeing what's going on, making certain that we are addressing those items. And there, you know, I realize it may, I'm going to refer you to the startup plan that I sent, because, you know, that is where I have a short PowerPoint saying hello to everyone. You know, I'm assessing the agency, our teams, each person's position, how we're operating, what our strategies are right now, and all of our reports and our key performance indicators, all of our documents, our contracts. I need to be doing that all throughout this first quarter here, and really meeting with the direct reports, setting those expectations, right? And then really making sure I'm maintaining all of those pause corps. That's a term used in public administration for planning or maintaining all the minimum necessary planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting, and budgeting. In the Q2, develop all those tools for success. So the minimum ones, because time will be of the essence, right? And then I meet with the team to hear their perspective on the challenges that we're facing so that we are structuring out those objectives that fall under the strategic goals and strategies. That way, we've got a baseline to start with so that we can be transparent with our community and things of the like, but then obtain, for Q3, introduce that applied executive leadership plan. So I'll have built the procedures for that, and I'll be educating the team in Q3 so that they can, as a leadership team, conduct that entrepreneurial operating system meeting with me weekly. They can do that meeting with me weekly, and so that they can do that Scrum meeting with their staff daily. And so then, that will, and of course, things can change, but that's a very solid basis for our success. And then in Q4, go live with starting one project initiative from our which is an objective from our strategic plan, so that we can start to see that's happening. And that way we're moving forward in Q4 and all through this time, building out these documents that I am referring to.
Love it. Thank you. I think the background of having a solid
I am
foundation in
confident that
terms.
it will, we will have the time to do that given this plan outline.
Great. Do you hear me right? Hello? Christina, do you hear me? I don't think she does. No, I am actually speaking through the microphone. Oh, making signs here.
We drop it in the chat that
I don't hear anyone, just so.
Christina, can you hear
I
anyone,
can-
Christina?
I can hear you,
Yeah.
Amsler.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, but she doesn't hear us. Uh-oh, maybe it's your internet. Let's put it in the chat. That we don't have a chat? No? In the
we
Zoom?
write it out on a sign and
Ooh, that's tough. Okay, so are you texting her now? Yeah.
Christina,
hear
can
you.
you hear me?
No, she doesn't hear any of us.
Mm-mm.
Hmm.
Does anyone have her number to do a quick
Yeah,
call?
Mac is.
Yeah, Max texting her.
Okay,
Maybe we can relaunch the Zoom room.
right.
Yeah,
Well,
come we
if
don't
she
have it.
can't hear us, then
Hold on. Okay, okay.
maybe she can disconnect and reconnect so we don't shut down our whole
Um,
feed.
My speaker is fine. Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay.
That she could see us. Okay, she could see us, so presumably nothing wrong with the internet feed.
Mm-mm. Yeah, she couldn't hear me either, and I'm also on Zoom, so I don't think it's the log cabin this time.
Swing and a miss.
Goodness, can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Hello.
I do not hear you.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear anyone in the log cabin, Christina?
Can we just, can we set up like a
I,
speakerphone on, maybe call or do it through
will
speakerphone?
is someone speaking?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We're all trying.
Oh, goodness. Mac?
Oh, so sorry, Christina.
Can you hear me?
Okay, great. I do believe that everything's fine on my end.
So
I'm
Christina,
checking my
maybe since
speaker and my system controls too.
she can't hear us. Can you hear me, Christina?
Sure, yes, yes, I can hear you.
All right, so maybe, it's gonna be annoying. Yes,
Do you want me to mute myself?
Yes. No.
over Zoom, just.
Okay. Will you speak again, someone, Veronica?
Yes. Do you hear me? Hello? Do you hear me now? No.
All right, she's, all right.
No.
Yeah,
I can hear you. I can hear you, Christina. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay.
Wow. Yeah, I was. Okay.
Okay, can you all hear me over there?
Yes.
I can
Okay.
hear you.
Okay. Let me get back into it. All right. So love all the background that you gave. Your presentation again was very detailed, and I love everything had to do with SOP. You and I spoke about a couple of times, and in theory, I think it's fantastic. Talk to me about the financials. And you saw the budget and the budget needs, and you saw strategic plan. There is a challenge. There is a gap between what we want to do and what we can afford. How do we get there in terms of diversifying the budget, reaching regional, federal, state monies? How do we move around that? And what's your experience around that?
Certainly, so short term, time is
Wait,
of the essence.
Hold on,
right? And
hold on,
so-
Christina. You need to unmute yourself so you can,
Me.
no, it's
Yes.
okay.
So certainly, short term, time is of the essence. I recognize that. So I think we'll have some small wins just from implementing some efficiency measures. And a lot of that I found comes from building out Excel macros and things of the like to actually automate processes. And that it can happen very quickly. And I can, express that for you more as needed. But, you know, long-term, focusing on all of those, you know, those projects that are being prioritized, and reaching out to and taking advantage of our resources and our resource engine. So for instance, our grants, we should be going and addressing our grants comprehensively. And I want to make certain that we're doing that. And so, you know, I know I believe it's outsourced. So working with that person, making certain that we're going to grants.gov. Are we going to Charity Navigator? Are we going to a lot of these tools, localinfrastructure.org, that we are, that we can use to our benefit? And then, and my expertise with grants in particular is comprehensive. I've, you know, done the research to develop the applications for grants, submitted grants to even federal grant funding, like the combined federal campaign, and then tracking the progress toward them and reporting on that so that we are articulating success with them. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Let me.
And I think that's, okay, here. Yes, thank you. It does. Sorry, we were going back and forth with the phone. And I think that, those will be my questions for now. If there's remaining time, I might use that, again. Okay.
I am not, I think you can hear.
The microphone.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, and here too. Okay, great. So I got to talk in this and this. Okay. How are you, Christina? I haven't spoken to you in a minute. You're muted. Oh, you're muted.
How about I unmute myself only when I go to respond, because there is reverberation. We're going to need to take a look at this.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sorry. You were saying, I didn't hear anything you said.
Hi,
Oh,
it's good to see you again
Okay.
too, or actually
All right.
see you in real life.
Okay, okay.
Virtually, you've never seen me virtually.
Right. Okay, so let me just jump into my questions. So obviously, you know, I looked at your resume. You and I spoke for a minute. You know, everybody on this dais obviously comes from the private sector, and I think that you know, we can all appreciate you know, what you created, because it looks like a fantastic business plan. I also, and then I'm sorry that I didn't look at your relook at your resume before this meeting, but if I remember correctly, I think you were one of the candidates with the least amount of governmental experience, correct?
Yes, my
So-
experience is limited to serving as a civil service and equal employment opportunity commissioner, which is which includes things like, I'm having reverberation, please excuse me, which includes, you know, hearing appeals, approving the annual reports for the departments and things of the like.
Gotcha. Okay, so, you know, one of the things that I've had to learn coming from the private sector into government, in the governmental sector, is that things move really, really slow. And, you know, you have a lot of things on that, on your plan that you put together. And, you know, I just want, you know, if you get to the job, I don't want you to get frustrated, because you know, it really, it's a shocker, especially coming from the private sector. Working in government it's a huge difference, right? So I just want you to be aware of that. So I'll just jump into my questions real quick. I have just a couple of questions for you. The first question is, what do you think is going to be your biggest struggle if you get this job, and how do you plan to deal with it?
You know, I think that's infrastructure and commerce. We don't have, you know, we're limited in scope with those. And so, you know, that's also leans into our greatest assets, which is really that oasis in the middle of Miami-Dade County, Mac. And that being said, we need to focus on, that's why we need to focus on those, that fiscal management and that strategic approach, which, yes, it looks fairly long in concept here, but that will enable us to be more efficient and move along with our strategic expectations and aspirations and needs, while still maintaining those operational recurring duties and supporting our staff.
So, but what would you say would be your struggle though, as far as initially, if you were to get this job, what do you feel would be a little bit complex or for you to handle, and how do you plan to overcome that?
Well, I think at first it's just a learning curve, and getting everything up and running. And my plan to overcome that, I would direct you back to that first year structure that I if I could show the screen, I'd show it to you all again, but I did articulate it briefly earlier. It's really, getting to know the team and everything that we have going on, and then devising solutions that will support our needs and our aspirations, and then implementing that and monitoring and controlling that, and then tracking that thereafter.
Next question is, what, if I were to talk to your former staff or current staff, how would they best describe you?
Well, I think they'd say that I'm positive, energetic, supportive, very team oriented.
And what about leaders within your organization? How would they describe you?
That, I have, I cultivate strategic thinking. I have the ability to evaluate our business environment and then make decisions and execute them efficient and with the team efficiently and effectively. And I follow through on my promises.
Excellent. What do you believe are the 3 top characteristics of an effective leader, and why?
You asked this one yesterday. Integrity, accountability, and ingenuity. We have to have integrity. It's about trust. That way we can communicate. That way we can execute on that strategic planning. We can implement change management. We can communicate to the team what are our challenges to that, what are our challenges or the threats that we're having to not changing certain things. And then, engaging them where necessary and appropriate, and offering clarifications and celebrating those small wins, and towards our ultimate goal, and remaining as transparent as possible, and then ultimately celebrating our successes and execution. And so all those things really come back to integrity. And then accountability. That's like what I was talking about with what leaders would say about me. We're doing things that are reasonable and appropriate. We need quality assurance, performance improvement, which means, are we looking at how is our code compliance doing at our code office and other departments in evaluating what they're doing and how successful are they at it, implementing corrective action as needed. And that's where I would bring you back to that whole weekly meeting and with the leadership and the daily meetings with the staff, because that really connects those dots between the operations, the strategies, and our people. Ingenuity. Oh, excuse me. Ingenuity.
Go ahead. Finish.
Oh,
Go ahead,
thank you.
go ahead.
Ingenuity. Cultivating that strategic thought, developing our agency's future and prioritizing those things appropriately.
Great. So if you listened to the questions yesterday, you probably already heard this one as well, because I'm asking this to everybody about the charter question. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, we've had a history here in the village with mayoral and commissioner in trying to run the village from the outside. Obviously, our our charter is very specific on what it says that we can and cannot do. So if you heard the question, then the question is very simple. If you're selected and you had an issue with a commissioner or a mayor wanting to, tell you what to do outside of these chambers, how would you handle that?
Right, so I did read the charter. It was shortly after Mac reached out to me for the first round of interviews. And from that question, I would say, first and foremost, I would go directly to that commissioner and say, you violated the charter, and here's even, I would provide that in written form even. That being said, it's about the context of the circumstances, right? And so if they're coming to my staff, because the charter does address going directly to my staff versus me, if you're going directly to me and asking that, I would say to you, if this is a priority, let's take it to the commission. If the commission agrees on consensus that we need to prioritize this item instead of another, well, yes, I'm here to remind you of what our expectations are and that we have a strategic plan and we follow it. But if you all agree on consensus that that's going to take priority, well, then yes, we will reallocate those unrestricted funds. That being said, if you're going to my staff, that I don't know the context of that, but we could talk about that as well. But, if it's something more like malicious than that, I would say, well, we confront inclivity very directly and address that so that we, hey, my recommendation might be the commission remove, but that's the decision of the commission.
All right, thank you, Christina. I'll pass it along to the mayor.
Hi, Christina, can you hear me?
Hi, John, I hear you.
We have Commissioner Oliveira going next, but admittedly, I have no idea how we're going to handle this. Can you hear Commissioner Oliveira?
You want me to three-air?
Hi, can you hear me? Can she hear me at all?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, cool. Okay, perfect. So we're on.
Great.
Awesome. Well, Christina, it's really good to see you
Okay,
again.
now I don't hear you.
Oh, wow.
Now I hear you. Oh, goodness gracious.
Okay.
Try now, Veronica. I unmuted Mac's phone and she might be hearing you through the phone.
Oh, cool. Okay. So
I am.
this is very high tech or low tech. I don't know. I'm not even sure which one it would be. It's there though, in the tech realm.
It is.
So, hey, I have so enjoyed talking with you, and I enjoyed your presentation very much today. Super detailed, really, really thorough, which all of your previous communications have been as well. So I'll just thank you for that again. I appreciate that very much. And I'm going to also kind of go with the same questions that I asked yesterday. And I know some things you have sort of outlined in materials you've submitted to us. I just also kind of want to hear it from you in your words. So I would mention, which I know I've said to you before, that our staff is really, really solid. And I think we all care very much about our village staff. So I will ask you again, how do you plan to gel with our existing staff? Walk me through that in terms of day one and beyond.
Right. So, and in my presentation, I know I'm not sharing screen and I went past time, but I, as the leader, I will get the behaviors that I exhibit and tolerate. And so I'm committed to continually learning and developing and exhibiting and supporting 7 very specific behaviors that I outlined in that document. I encourage you to look at. So, setting, yes, I will preliminarily set expectations with the team that we behave with the highest integrity, and that our residents come first, and that they must understand that people strategy and operations process that is core to our ability to execute and provide that socially equitable experience for our residents and our community, our village. And so that said, I have a whole process here. It's it's 5 steps. And those are the things that we would follow. But like I said before, I manage by walking around, getting to know people, letting them know I'm invested in them. And so that, you know, I'm learning what their motivators are. And I'm using that to help, you know, to take my knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristic qualities and personality and help develop their knowledge KSAOs as well. And so that's really what it's about for me. It's really about actually investing in each other and our village together.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Second question is, it's a kind of an important one for, as you know, many of our boards are volunteer boards. And so, you know, and there's a lot of opinions here in the neighborhood. And I want to know, just off the cuff, what comes to mind when you think about code compliance?
So code compliance, coming from a healthcare background that is very structured, coming from Florida or coming from California, excuse me. It's quality assurance, performance improvement. I touched on that a little bit earlier. And so it's really about making sure, you know, are we promoting proactivity and mitigating issues beforehand, but are we also enforcing it? And that's where I would bring you right back to that operating process I proposed that helps us to make sure that we are managing our time wisely so that we're ultimately using that at their annual evaluations. And we're using that to ensure that we're being consistent and we're not having our village residents, you know, feeling some kind of way about, oh, you tagged him, but not me, right? And so that's critical.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. The last
Yes.
question that I'm going to ask you is a softer one. I just want to know, what was your best day on the job in the last 3 months?
Best day on the job. Well, I would have to say it was, as you know, and many of the other commissioners know, I am no longer working at Hospice of San Joaquin, though I had the severance and everything. But that was probably my best and worst day, because I had to leave the people that I care so much about. And at the same time, I got the opportunity to decide on my next move.
Right. That's very genuine. Thank you. And that's all I've got. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Veronica.
Hi, Christina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. So I appreciate the materials you put together for us there. It was very thorough and very detailed. While we didn't get to scan all of it while we were going through it, I'm looking forward to receiving it so we can take a look at it more in depth. So one of the questions that I'd like to ask you here is, I'd like for you, and this relates a little bit to kind of your experience and I don't mean this in an insulting way, but kind of a little bit of a lack of experience in kind of public service and in government service. So what I'm curious in what I'd like for you to detail for us is if you could provide us with an example in either your most current role or any of your prior roles, an example of how you in a leadership role improved efficiency, and how you saw whatever directive or whatever it was that you did to help improve efficiency, how you saw that directive kind of grow and develop over time.
Sure. So we had a 1-year-long plan to compose all of our standard operating procedures. We didn't really have those documented, right? We had our policies, which was our what for us all in government, that's our Muni code, right? But we didn't have the how we're doing it. And so that is where the SOPs come in. And in developing the SOPs, working with the different departments to make certain that they were creating those appropriately, I worked with the directors to outline what they needed to do to hold their help their personnel accomplish it, hold their personnel accountable. And then I even in certain cases work directly with the team members building those standard operating procedures. And so one instance was I learned that in one department, there were 2 out of 4 people in that department doing the same process without even knowing it. And so by eliminating one person doing that, you are creating efficiencies elsewhere. We had a piece of software that also had a report pre-canned in it that the person was building at, from scratch every month to send to an external hospital. And so it was, taking, bringing to saying, hey, you can pull that out and then just highlight, do a conditional format, or I'll set you up a conditional format and you just export into that Excel template and it'll automatically conditionally format for you to highlight those certain values. Now you've got something and you're saving yourself a day of time. So that is one example I believe addresses your concern. And I will say that I also have experience, as I said, I grew up in the clerk of courts in Cleveland. My parents and parents were all in government in some capacity or another. And I am very confident that my experience in not-for-profit work will articulate appropriately.
Great, thank you.
Yes, John.
One of the other questions that I'd like you to address for us, generally, if you're, or generally first and more specifically, if you're able, if you could just kind of detail for us how you handle, generally how you handle communications in your most, just use your most recent role because that's kind of most prescient. How you handle communicating with your team, communicating with staff. So transferably here, communicating with village staff, communicating with village departments, with boards, commission, and residents. How you kind of perceive that process working?
Right. So I communicate, by leading by example. I communicate my perspective. They communicate theirs. Everyone has to have the opportunity to put their perspective out there, and then the team works together to come to a diplomatic decision, right? And so it's all about that's like the key to our ability to execute is how well we communicate. And so sure, we might have a stakeholder engagement plan that we use at key points in our, say, strategic planning process, wherein every 3 years, as my plan outlines, we will, I will facilitate the commission serving it in the role that Alan played to help make sure that our strategies and our goals and our strategies are still in alignment with our aspirations and needs of the community. And that means having that stakeholder engagement plan come into play at a key phase in that moment, and outlines for people, hey, what are the ways in which we should engage that person, and that engagement plan. I'd love to show you that on here and share my screen, but I'll send it to you all. And so, but as I said, it all comes back around to just being real with each other as well.
Great, thanks so much, Christina.
Yes, John.
I want to thank you again for being very thoroughly prepared. It's very obvious that you've done a lot of research. So thank you very much for spending the time with us here this evening. So what we're going to do at this point is we reserve a few additional minutes at the end here for any other commissioners that may want to ask some follow-up questions. So we're going to start with that. Okay.
Great.
Does anyone have any other additional questions for Christina?
Yeah. Okay.
Pass it down.
Hi, Christina. I'm back. Veronica here. So I have a follow-up question. Do you know how many FTEs do we have currently in the
23.
budget? Okay, great. So, it's a limited amount for the plan that you have ahead. And the second question is, timeline of this, and where does your career path after Biscayne Park kind of leads you to within this path that you've kind of outlined, this kind of plan of action that you outlined. Basically, what I'm trying to understand is if this takes, 2, 3, 4 years, longevity is an issue for us. How do you match those things, your career
Right.
path versus what needs to happen and, the time that's needed?
Yes. So I think I've said to you and a few of the other commissioners, I am dedicated to 3 years of earning my ICMA city management credential. And I know that helps me to have the basics, the basic principles necessary to ensure that I am able to support our village, our community, and our team. But as I said, I really mean to live and lead in my community. And so I will be looking at that and assessing whether or not it's realistic for me to live in Village Biscayne Park, what that means for me and my family as well. But like I said, it's about legacy. I think I've told you all that as well. And so I want to be an agent for change, or that pillar of support for consistency, depending on what the scenario is. And so I really do want to see the fruits of my labors go into real action and help our community and its residents and set that example for my daughter and really make certain that I'm leaving with this agency better than I found it, right? I want to know that we have real approaches that will help us to execute and be successful with that strategic plan, even if I'm gone.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes, Veronica. Hey, Mac. Yes.
I forgot I have to speak into the microphone and the
Oh,
phone.
goodness.
So look, you gave some very thorough explanations of things, and I really do appreciate it. A lot of what you discussed with us is theoretical, and you discussed a lot of processes and other things that I can see applying to a very large organization and being much needed. But the reality here in Biscayne Park is that we're a very small village. As you just mentioned to Veronica, we have 23 employees here in the village. So I'm going to just say this, and I want you to respond, and I'm not sure there's so much of a question in here as a topic. You would land in a job that has very few people in each department. Public Works has 4 employees, I think. Parks and Recs has 1, 2 full-time employees, maybe. A very small administration, a couple of outsourced employees that come to us from a vendor. And to get the job done, the manager in this village has to get to work in addition to managing the work. It means you have to roll your sleeves up every day. And I've seen managers in the past plants and direct traffic and do all kinds of very hands-on things. Are you prepared to do that for us? And what kind of experience do you have that would demonstrate that you are capable of that?
Absolutely. Excuse the reverb. Absolutely, I do. So, I'm happy to talk more about how we can do those theoreticals that I know in real world practice will help us. And if they don't ultimately, I assess it and they don't ultimately seem to benefit us, maybe we can refine that to a minimized approach that will meet our needs. But it definitely means having an operating process, having a process to help to ensure that our people are being evaluated appropriately and supported and developing, and then of course having our strategic process as well. But in application, one of my core strengths is Excel. I have built probably 50 Excel spreadsheets. I built a dashboard for every department so that they're tracking all of their critical measures. Are we really living up to our standard of admitting patients same day? Yes or no? Well, we need to have a spreadsheet with a series of customized functions that allow us to evaluate that quickly, and so that is one example of the many I can articulate for you if you'd like to hear more.
Thank you very much. Well, tell her I said thank
Oh,
you. She can't hear me.
He said, thank you.
Oh, yes.
All right, Christina, if there's no other questions right now, if
Do you
we.
know, I want to address something. It also, yesterday, everyone was asked about the emergencies. I want to convey that I have great experience with the emergency disaster recovery plans and their responsiveness. So I've been an administrator on call every night for a week, every month, rotating, responding in the middle of the night as needed. And our highest likelihood is fires. Yours is flood and hurricane, right? But so, creating that plan, but also responding to it. And I can articulate an actual emergency that we've responded to before. And so I want to make certain I address that. And I do have a question for the commission. Were you done, John?
I was just,
Excuse me.
I was going to ask if you had any questions for us, but I do appreciate that last bit of information. So yes, if you have a question for us, we'd be, of course, happy to hear it.
Yes. Thank you. As a commissioner myself, presently for civil service and equal employment opportunity, I know that serving on a commission is a labor of love. And so first, I want to thank all of you for your service, which is vital to enhancing the social equity in the village of Biscayne Park. But second, I have a compound question for each of you. Are you content with your current position as commissioner, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, for the village of Biscayne Park? If yes, why? And if no, what can be done personally to improve your experience? And what do you believe can be done to improve the experience for the commissioning body?
So I appreciate that question. We're going to try and keep it brief in our responses, I think, because we want to try and stay on schedule as best we can.
Yes.
I'm happy to start for you. I can say pretty unequivocally, yes, I'm content. I've been very, very fulfilled by doing this job. And first and foremost, for me, the answer is one, sitting with these great folks up here, and working with the great people here in the village. But meeting people and engaging with people has been one of my favorite things, just doing this. So it's been very rewarding in that respect. So I'm going to, does anybody want to go next? I'll pass it down this way.
I'll do it
Thank
quickly
you.
too. Christina, thank you for the question. So that was very sweet. But yes, I'm also very content with the opportunity you brought about something about being an example. I also have kids. I rather be on being part of the solution than the problem, as they say. So if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem sort of situation. So I'm hoping that that's making, mirroring something for my kids in the future. Are there things that I would like to change as I learn more and more? I'm sure there's, a list that I'm compiling of things that I would love to do different. And it's just part of that. It's part of the learning. It's part of the experience that I bring and just that. But overall, I'm very, very content. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Veronica.
Thanks again. Yeah, thank you also for the question. So I'm content, but I'm a one-term guy. I think I've made it pretty clear that I came here and I actually ran just because this place was a disaster. And we had some really some nutty people up here, and I thought that I could come and try to bring some civility and some direction. But I'm not a politician, and I don't like politics, and I don't like games. And so I'm not very good at being a politician. So I understand my limitation. So I just have about a year and a half left, and then I will go back to fishing full time.
Great.
Sure. Veronica, if you can hear us, do you want to jump in?
Oh, she's muted and
She's there, but she's muted, but. Oop, she's got her
Please
hand up.
raise your hand.
That's not good.
Thank you. Yeah, I needed that help from the from the village clerk. Thank you. I again, I feel like there's always so much consensus on this on this particular board, and I will say, of course, I'm content. I'm doing this. I did this with intention, and at the same time, I'll take some of what everyone has said so far. You know, being an example to the kids, the mess that I witnessed for a few years prior to, you know, deciding to go ahead and jump in and see what I can do to be part of a solution. And so I have an affinity for, you know, improving situations and you know, the next iteration of efficiency, right? So that's also been very interesting and very fun for me. I will say, yes, I'm content. Yes, there are more and more, always more things to do better and improve upon. So I appreciate the question very much, though.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll play cleanup here. No, I'm not content with my position at all, Christina. I'm thrilled with my position. Every morning I wake up and I can't wait to get to work for the Village of Biscayne Park. I do it for a little bit before I start my real job. I do it again at night, and I try to fit it in over the weekends as well. And my biggest thrill is when I get a thank you from someone when I run into them at the grocery store, especially when they say, "We think you're a jerk and we disagree with what you did, but thank you for trying so hard."
Thank you.
Christina, thank you again for the time this evening. We very much appreciate it. Very quickly, next steps is I think that we're going to be discussing this again at our next regular commission meeting, which is next week. So best I can tell you at this point is we will be in touch and we hope to speak with you again very soon.
Okay, great. Thank you. I will mute myself now.
Thank you, Christina. Have a wonderful evening.
You as well, John. Everyone, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Chris, sorry, we're gonna just take a minute. We had some issues on that one.
Good to see you. Oh, absolutely. Oh, no, thank you.
You saw that whenever she.
Guys, have mercy on us by being here in person. Oh, yeah, it's cool. Somebody mentioned it yesterday where, might have been like people, you know, in the big operative, you know, days sitting up top.
I am getting in, absolutely. Go through and do the whole mute thing here.
Let us know when you're all set up and you're ready for the questions.
Yeah. Oh, I wish. No, that is Colorado. Our oldest lives out there. I forget the name of the lake. What's that?
I don't think he's talking about. Okay.
Fire.
Now we can see.
It's very still. Just kind of.
So is everybody here that needs to be here? I'm ready to go whenever you are.
Okay, great. We got Commissioner Olivera. She's there. All right, great. All right, Chris, do you mind if I call you Chris?
Absolutely.
Wonderful, thank you. You've already witnessed one interview, so I assume that you're going to be familiar with our format. So I don't want to delay any further. I want to get us started right away. We will start with Commissioner Kennedy.
Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great, thank you. I didn't fly in and get to my hotel at 2:30 in the morning, so gold star for that, Chris. So welcome to Biscayne Park, by the way, from Wisconsin.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm not even going to restate my question or the topics that I gave you. Everyone knows what they are. I'm just going to start your time here. You have 5 minutes. Are you going to do the strategic plan question first or the budget?
Yes. Yeah, I'll hit the strategic plan
Okay, so you
first.
have 5 minutes and we are actually timing you, so please stay on time so we can stay on schedule.
Absolutely.
Okay, beautiful, thanks.
So you've already done a ton of work creating the mission, vision, values, and strategic plan. So now it's time to actually bring it to life. The other applicants that you've chatted with have had great plans on procedures and theories and things like that. I want to just talk about some things that I would actually do. So we need to increase and diversify revenue so that we can enact this. Let's talk about enacting a local option sales tax. It's allowed under Florida state statutes. Without commercial property, retail restaurant, we don't need it quite yet, but I'll touch on why that's going to be important. The second one is to enact a local transient use tax on Airbnbs. We can actually grab some of that revenue from the rentals for the village. Once we get those taxes enacted, let's rezone a few areas to maybe allow for restaurants, perhaps such as a coffee shop, if that is what the commission would like to do. And that's where that sales tax would come in. We can grab some revenue from that as well, pad our bottom line a little bit. Let's host some regular events such as farmers markets, maker markets, things that are going to generate sales tax revenue on a regular basis, weekly or monthly. And then I think we should advertise the use of this log cabin. This is absolutely incredible. Small offsite business meetings, weddings, all sorts of stuff that we could do here, and that would be an additional source of revenue. Talk a little bit about some of my ideas for sustainability and reliability. First thing we have to do is apply for FEMA's flood mitigation assistance grant. Those funds, if we're awarded, we can use to continue the stormwater management. They're specifically set aside for things like flood management. We should also apply for FEMA's Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant funding. That fund we can actually use to bury utilities. We can take some of those power poles down, put it all underground under resiliency. Another thing that I saw just driving around today with Commissioner Kennedy, we should probably look at replacing some of the impermeable parking surfaces in the right of way with permeable surfaces. Remove the asphalt, put in gravel. That will help with the absorption of the water and try to limit some of those flood issues that we currently have. And then I think we should probably contract an engineering firm to start the process of assessing the need for costs of what the project would look like for sanitary sewer, so we can address this long term. We need to improve communications a little bit. My suggestions would be to rework the website to make it easier for a layperson to navigate and understand. Those of us in government are totally familiar with agenda, minutes, recordings, things like that. Somebody who doesn't work with government on a regular basis would be a little bit challenged. We need to create transparency, but making it easier for them to access the information. We'll rework the navigation to make minutes and videos easier to find. I'd like to see year-to-date budget information in an easy to understand format online, so the residents can see what their tax dollars are going towards and how we are doing on our overall budget plan. Maybe we could do some sort of like this week in Biscayne Park blog, perhaps one of the commissioners, perhaps the manager, maybe department heads, maybe the clerk. Really an informal communication. This is what's going on. This is what's coming up. This is what we need help with, or hey, look at what we just did. I also think we should create a police blotter page as well as a code enforcement blotter page. Not to shame people by any means, but that's going to show what the police and what code enforcement are doing. We could list out the complaints. We could list out the enforcement actions. We could do some minor demographic information, or at the very least resident versus non-resident on the police blotter page, so that we can see what's truly going on. Talk a little bit about reviewing and updating zoning. I think my personal opinion would be we convene a committee to review all regulations, zoning, code, building, all of those sorts of things within the first 12 months of forming that committee. It's going to be a monstrous task, but I think for this plan to move forward, that's definitely something we need to do. Key to that is going to be repealing regulations that are either unenforceable or irrelevant. And the reason we want to do that is because we have to commit to 100% enforcement of all codes and regulations. They're on the books for a reason. We need to enforce them. If they no longer make sense, if they don't really work, then let's get rid of them. But we have to have that 100% enforcement, which is fair for everybody. And like I mentioned before, the activity for this would be shown on the blotter page. High quality municipal services. This is a passion of mine. I am a townie. I come from a small town. I love town life. I love town government. And it presents significant challenges when communicating with town residents. Their expectations are often different than what we can afford. So what I'd like to do is set up an online forum that residents and staff can use to send us compliments and complaints. Put it all right online. Is that my 5?
Yes.
All right. That went a lot faster in the hotel room earlier today. It must have been the caffeine. That's okay. I'll hit some of it in the budget. All right. Small village, small budget, huge services. I took a peek at some of the recent or some of the local municipalities around here. There's about 8 of similar population.
Sorry, do you mind putting it in a presentation format?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
There we go.
There-
Took a look at 8 that are about the same size population wise. There's nothing else that's the same size geographically and that doesn't have commercial. So it's not exactly an apples to apples, but the good news is Biscayne Park is number 3, the 3rd lowest when it comes to actual tax levies. Took a look at some of the big expenditures like parks and police and whatnot, and it seems to be fairly in line. You're gonna have a problem with increased property values. I took a look at 11143 Griffin. In 2022, their real estate taxes are about 15K. If the revaluation happens and pushes them closer to market value, their taxes are gonna double. We need to do what we can to help soften that blow. And to do that, we need to minimize what Biscayne Park is spending. To minimize our budget, that minimizes the levy, and it's gonna help the residents out of a horrible situation into a just kind of a bad situation. So we need to find savings, find grants, and do some revenue diversification, which I'll touch on. Biscayne Park's employees are probably the best way to find revenue saving or find expense saving situations. I'd like to create an efficiency bonus. If an employee comes up with a plan to reduce costs, let's give that employee a 50% bonus, 50% of what that annual plan would cost us as a bonus. That's going to encourage them to look for ways to save. And that also helps when we go to implement solutions. If they're part of if they decide that this is a service or a product that we can cut or make more efficient, implementing it is not going to be as painful for them. The first thing I would do though is put all non-contract services out for bid. Let's let our vendors know that we're looking at price and we want the very best. This will get us the best price, but it also puts all of our vendors on notice that we're looking. And then once contracts come due for additional services, we'll put those out as well. Grants in 2021, there was over $1 million. In 2023 was under 85,000. That's unacceptable, in my opinion. We need to work with our grant writer to up that a little bit. We can look for green technologies, recreational spaces, traffic control improvements, police equipment, those sorts of things. I'm coming into the tail end of a budget creation process. What I prefer to do when it comes to budgets is ask department heads for the worst case, status quo, and best case. Let's cut your budget 10% in the worst case, what suffers? Let's give you status quo, which is just 8% increase, keep up with inflation. Let's see what that looks like. And best case, let's give you 18% more than your current budget. What can you do with it? That's information that I would then bring to the commission to say, this is what we're looking at. You can then choose which services are okay to cut. I'm at my 3.
That's the 3.
Whew,
Or-
that's a lot
We're-
of talking.
We're
very
tough,
quickly.
Chris. We're tough like that. Okay, okay. So I saw that you emailed all of that to all of us here prior to the meeting. So thank you for sending that in advance. I didn't have time to look at it, obviously, but I will now that you've presented to us, but I appreciate the overview. So I want to give you one other kind of softer question that I'm asking each of the commissioners, different questions, but I want to ask one specific one to you, given that you and I spent some time today taking the grand tour of Biscayne Park. The grand tour of Biscayne Park doesn't take too long, does it, Chris? But you and I did drive down about every street and we got to see a lot of things and you got to hear my opinions on things, but you also saw with your own eyes what's going on in this village. You had mentioned that I have that tagline on my email. You asked me about that and I told you it's not an official tagline, maybe one of these days. But I like to refer to Biscayne Park as an oasis in the heart of Miami. I think it perfectly describes us. Now that you've seen us, I want you to step out of the theory in your brain. Now you're here, the plane landed and you took the tour and you got to see this. What do you see as the actual physical and theoretical threats to our oasis in the heart of Miami?
I think the biggest threat that you're going to face is some of the properties that I've seen that are in need of maintenance and repair, I think we'll say. It's clear that code is not being enforced uniformly. The people who live here spend a lot of money to live here. They want to have a nice neighborhood. They want to have nice services. And we have codes and regulations for a reason. With that said, there's a ton of gorgeous places and spaces around here. I absolutely fell in love. We need to make sure that we can preserve that as well. And we do that also for code ordinances. We saw a broken down, busted out vehicle back in one of the streets that needs to go. That's an eyesore. We don't want to look at that sort of stuff. But I think overall, it is, like I said, a great location. It is absolutely incredible.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Amsler?
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very clear and I love to see the action points that you had outlined. I wonder what I saw missing maybe, and I wanted you to expand on is how do you put that in a time frame? A lot is a wish list, but you come in new, you're moving to Florida. So you have to kind of get quickly adjusted to our regulations, to our stakeholders, county, statewide, and then your staff. And so how do you manage all of that? How do you kind of plan things out?
I'm definitely a planner. I have a 30, 60, 90-day plan when I come into a new position or a new job, a new project, what have you. Part of the initial 30-day plan would be getting to know the staff first and foremost. They are the most important assets that Biscayne Park has. If they're happy, things go great. If they're not happy, things don't go at all. So getting to know them, helping them understand that I am here to help them. My job is to give them the tools that they need to do their jobs better. The other part of my 30-day plan is getting to know some of the surrounding administrators or managers or mayors, what have you, so we can start building up some of that local network. I found working for the town of Burke and working for the state of Wisconsin, when you have that sort of a network to assist, if I have questions on things like Florida statute, Miami-Dade ordinances, I can reach out to some of those contacts to fill me in on what we need.
There we go. Thank you. So I guess to that, as a follow-up, how do you plan to hold high standards, or how do you define high standard, what the standards are, and how do you manage to have everybody buy into that plan? And I'm talking about staff, but I'm also talking about this data. So we're going to have a chance to communicate. We're all going to have different ideas. You have to manage us all. How do you do that? So how do you set the line and the tone of communication within your staff as well as this commission?
I would approach it again from the perspective of it's called servant leadership. I am here to serve you, the commission, to carry out your wishes, to do what you think we need to do. You are here to serve the residents and the honorary mayor, who I met earlier today, to do what they need for the village. Communication needs to be open. It needs to be honest, it needs to be clear and concise. I don't like playing with words. I prefer not to operate in gray areas. If there is something you need or something I need from you, I will come out and say it. I'll ask you to do the same for me. But part of that with the employees is to recognize their performance. Part of the presentation that I unfortunately didn't get to was an above and beyond type. From those complaints and compliments that we receive, once a quarter, we'll pick out one of those compliments and give that staff member an extra day of PTO. Let's reward them for those behaviors that we want to see. Setting the standards is another key to that. It's going to depend on the position. It's going to depend on the expectation of the position. But the first meeting that I would have with staff is to go over what their position description is and ask them what they think. Is this what it really is? How can we achieve that? How can I help them achieve that so they're successful, and next quarter they get that above and beyond.
Wonderful. And then, and this will be the last question, at least for now. So you currently hold a position as a commissioner, correct?
Mhm.
In your town. What made you want to get on the other side, serving, with now this perspective that you've had? How long have you served?
Almost 10 years.
Okay, so you have quite the experience.
Yes.
So what made you want to come, manager for a city?
Great question. Our youngest just graduated high school. So we are out of Wisconsin. I have family down here. I have a sister in Central Florida. I have my mom and my sister over on the Gulf Coast. So we were looking for someplace that we could come to be closer to them, but not too close. So I saw this position pop up. This manager position is essentially what I have been doing, or part of what I have been doing for the town of Burke. I understand how state and local and county government runs. I understand the challenges that come with it. I also feel it's a duty to serve. I think we are all put here for a reason, and that reason is to make life better for somebody else. I've served as a volunteer EMT, firefighter, sheriff's office dive team member. I'm elected representative in my town. If we want things to change, or if we want things to be really nice, we need to take part. So I saw this and I said, this is a small town. I can do this. This is awesome. Looking at it online, it reminds me a lot of Burke, only one.
Got it.
But this fits right in with the experience that I've gained over the past 10 years in government.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris, so much.
Thanks, Commissioner. Vice Mayor?
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you again. So obviously you and I chatted a while ago, and we talked for a little while. So the reason that I asked the questions that I ask is because I'm very interested in knowing each manager's style, right? So I'll just jump right into the questions. I'm sure you've already heard some of them, maybe you remember some of them, but So the first question is, what do you believe are the top 3 characteristics of an effective leader and why?
It's,
Chris, would you mind trying to talk into the microphone a little more directly? I guess there's some people that.
Absolutely.
Can hear you.
yeah, I'm just going to do that.
There
If
we
that's okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think the biggest characteristic of a good leader is integrity. You have to say what you mean. You have to mean what you say. There can be absolutely no question that you are going to do what is right, or in this case, legal. You have to have that integrity. Another great characteristic of a leader is having that servant attitude. A good leader is not somebody who leads from the front. A good leader is somebody who leads from the back, supporting and pushing up the people who work for him, as well as removing the obstacles. One of my old mentors used to say that his job as a manager was to get rid of the roadblocks and then let the people that we hire do what they were hired to do. Other than that, I think compassion is the third thing. Everybody comes from a different situation. Everybody comes from a different background. Everybody had a different kind of morning. You cannot judge people based on a specific interaction. You have to understand that everybody is in a different place in their life, in their day, in their year, and work with that. Showing that compassion, not rushing to judgment, and offering support.
Okay, so then the follow-up question to that, and you've probably answered it in your 3 characteristics, is, what the people that currently work for you or have worked for you, how would they best describe you?
They say that I am fair, that I am supportive, and that I am driven. Being driven, I think, would kind of be like the 4th quality of a good leader. It is that all we need to do is sometimes it's treating each failure as a learning opportunity, getting what you can from that. Fairness, I would treat employees I do treat employees the same way as I treat. To give anybody special treatment by any means, we're going to make sure everybody receives the exact same treatment.
Okay, and then on the other side, what about leaders within your organization? How would they describe you?
Pain in the butt because I'm driven. I don't take no for an answer. No, my current manager, she would tell you that I'm detail oriented. She would tell you that I am eager to take on new tasks, that I look for ways to, using a retail term, wow the customer. What can we do to make somebody's day or week or life? And then she would also say that I act with great integrity. She understands and knows exactly where I'm coming from, what I'm expecting, and what I'm expecting of her.
What do you believe will be your biggest struggle if you were to get this position?
Finding a shirt I
Initially.
can't sweat through.
That's all of our struggles.
Yeah,
Finding a shirt he can't sweat through.
Good luck.
this is insane. No.
August is
No.
only hotter.
I think, in all honesty, my biggest struggle is going to be learning municipal codes or is the ordinance. The trap that I'm going to fall into that I'm already aware of is trying to translate what I understand in Wisconsin to do something here. I have to make sure I do the research before I take any actions.
And then the last question, I think you've probably already heard it about our charter, right? You heard that question? Okay, good. So, we've had in the past commissioners and mayoral interference in the day-to-day operations of this village. And obviously you don't work for any one particular person on this dais. You work for the entire commission and the residents, right? So if you were confronted with a situation like that during your tenure as our manager, how would you deal with that?
So first of all, don't mistake my Midwest kindness for weakness. I know after working 10 years in politics, how and when to turn that off. So if I have somebody coming up to me trying to go around the chain, my response is to, well, actually kick back into Midwest kindness, hand your hiney to you on a silver platter and have you say thank you, but have you understand that we just can't do that. I totally value your opinion. I totally value your input. Let's run this through the correct channel. so that we can take action on it. If I were to ever find out that somebody was going around to one of my employees, I would have a little chat with the employee just to get the baseline, figure out what's going on. And then the same thing, come have a chat with whichever commissioner is doing that, saying, you know, I'd love to help you out. How can I help you? I want to make sure I'm doing what you need done, but you got to let me know. Part of that compassion thing, everybody makes mistakes, and that's golden. If it happens again, you'll see Midwest Nice go way out the door.
I like that. That's it. Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate you and your, and especially coming down here.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Do we have Commissioner Oliveira? There she is. She's ready.
Hi there. I'm ready. I didn't have to fight to be unmuted this time. Awesome. So, Chris, it was such a pleasure speaking with you before, and welcome to Miami.
Thank you.
So I did want to say that I loved your presentation. I loved how action oriented it was. So thank you for that different take and for piquing all of our interests there with regard to that to-do list that you came up with. That was very, very cool. I appreciated that very much. You've answered so many of my questions already in our conversations, as well as tonight in the way that you've answered other folks' questions. So I'll go ahead and I'll ask you the same question I've asked the others, which is, again, and I'll repeat, for us, our staff is really important to us. We have a really great staff. And I'd really like to know how you plan to gel with our staff coming in.
The first couple of weeks that I'm here, I'm actually going to set up a meeting with each staff member and each commission member, but focusing on staff members specifically. That first meeting, that first conversation is more of a get to know you. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about your job, but more importantly, tell me about where you want to go. What is it you accomplish? This is not them collect a paycheck and do your job and go home. Or do you have aspirations of doing something else, and then finding ways that I could help them with whatever those goals are. Again, from that servant leader perspective, I'm here to support and I am here to help. I view success as making sure my employees are good enough that any surrounding municipality would want to snatch them, caffeine, late night, snatch them in a second, but treating them so well here that they won't want to leave.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and yield the rest of my time. I think my connection is a little unstable. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, because you had cut out a little bit on that last question, and now I'm getting a little message telling me that it's unstable. So I just wanted to make sure on that. With that, I'll yield the rest of my time. And before that, I will just share with you that I think if you do come down here and you come into this role, which I think you're very well suited for, get comfortable with sweating. I think that's the best advice I could give you.
Oh, I so don't want to, but it's worth it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Sweat or snow?
You don't have to
Is
shovel
that what it
sweat.
comes down to? Is
Yep,
that what it
yep,
comes down
and you
to?
don't have to shovel sweat, so it's all good.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. It's a choice that I made several years ago as well, and I chose, would you say sweat or snow? The
Mhm.
former, the former. So Chris, it's a pleasure to meet you in person and speak with you again. I'm very glad that you're here with us. It's a pleasure to meet you in person, and what you put together was very thorough and very detailed, and I very much appreciate the actual examples of how you can achieve some of the things that you propose. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So I have a question. In one of the challenges, you've already identified it, but one of the challenges that you might face here is coming outside perspective, which is not a bad thing. Outside perspective can be good things. But one of the things that I've seen with managers here and surrounding municipalities is the willingness and, well, and the importance to engage other municipalities, engage in third party, so to speak, I guess, boards and activities, League of Cities, things like that, to help better initiate yourself with the other folks. So if you might just kind of detail for us how you think you might best integrate into the local, the local village, the county, the other municipalities, the state, how you envision that process coming from an out-of-state perspective.
Coming from the out-of-state perspective, I'll skip over what I would do here in Biscayne Park. There are a couple of associations of Florida League of Cities. There are a couple others that I would immediately join if at all possible. That gives me the networking opportunities to chat with surrounding members. I'd also, in my 30, 60, 90 plan, set up meetings with the administrators or managers or mayors to have those conversations. The thing that I would do, found very useful when I've done it in Burke, is to actually set up meetings with the county legislators, whatever they're called down here, as well as the state representatives. If nothing else, just to open those lines of communication so that if there is an issue, if there is a question, or if there is something I can help with, or they can help with, we'd to have that conversation. Here in Biscayne Park, it's having a door that's always open and a phone that's always available. I would thoroughly enjoy getting out to some of the events that you have here. My goodness, the Halloween thing, the Thanksgiving parade, Christmas. That's going to be our biggest cry when we leave Wisconsin. But being down here, participating in that Christmas is just getting out and meeting a lot of the residents. The other thing that I would do to help with getting to know the employees down here is do a ride along on each of the shifts for the police department so I can get to understand Biscayne Park from their perspective. Also spend time with each staff member doing part of their job for the day, just so I can get a better understanding of what it is that they do. Doing it that way, I think it'd be a lot easier to manage because they would know that I understand, or at the very least have seen what their days look like, what their lives look like. And residents, I hope, will be able to give me a jingle. I am a politician. I sit in your seat up in Burke. I'm no stranger to glad handing. Totally understand how politics work. And that is what I would bring down here to kind of build that network.
That makes sense. Thank you. So a lot of what you talked about is kind of extracurricular, so to speak, and that it's not part of the 9 to 5 portion of it. And
Yep.
I'm sure in the position that you're in up in Burke that you've experienced that, and that's part of the job. So can you talk to me a little bit about your experience in Burke, kind of doing those extra things and maybe being here on the weekends when the situation necessitates? The example that I've used in the past so far is if we have a heavy rain, we experience flooding, Public Works needs to be out, pump trucks need to be out, and the manager has, well, not traditionally, but in the past helped coordinate that and been there on site to help kind of facilitate those solutions. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you may have done that up in Burke and how you may expect to do that down here?
Absolutely. Running a small village, running a small town is a lot different than running a major city, major corporation. The position of manager is not somebody that sits at a desk and issues edicts. The position of manager is somebody who, yes, does that when it's necessary, but also rolls up the sleeves and digs in. It would be, if I were to get the position, it would be my responsibility to make sure that this village is running the way that you want it to run. On the weekend, if that means spending all night standing next to the pump truck, that's what it takes. That's what we do. That's what I've done in Burke. There is no such when it comes to small town management. When I get done with work, I spend most of the evening emailing, calling, Facebook messaging residents with questions, comments, and concerns. The job doesn't turn off when the clock hits 5. In the town of Burke, we are so small. We lost our village administrator not that long. I think I mentioned that before. We hired a really crappy one, fired him. And then it took us a little longer to find the real good one. So I actually dug in and did a lot of the duties that the village manager does, and got a much better understanding, I should say, of how it is not a 9 to 5 position. There are usually 5,000 irons in the fire, a lot of things to take care of. And in the middle of it all, a snowstorm hits or a hurricane. So it's understanding that this is not a 9 to 5 job. whether it's on the commission or whether it's the village manager. And it's understanding that you simply have to do what needs to be done, roll up your sleeves and get in there and get it done, because that's what you're paid to do.
Absolutely. In a lot of what you discussed, it certainly helps to be very well organized and prepared. There have been instances in the past here where maybe a deadline may have gone overlooked, or a critical component of a process was overlooked and we ended up having to pay for it later out of an emergency fund. So we look at those things as surprises that we really don't like to encounter. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you up in Burke, again, this is, directly transferable experience here, how in Burke you've kind of implemented organizational processes to help keep track of those deadlines and make sure that we're adhering to all of them and that none of them are going overlooked or missed?
I am a firm believer in Gantt charts, roadmaps. So it has individual tasks or projects. It lists the start date, it lists the end date or due date, whatever the case. So you can kind of gauge where you are in the process of what you need to accomplish. At the beginning of the year or quarter or month or what have you, that's when you populate that. And that's what your guiding principle is for the rest of that month or quarter or year. Up a couple $100,000 worth of grant money because our administrator just didn't bother submitting the paperwork. Had we followed something like the Gantt chart, we would have been able to check in on that and make sure that he was doing what he needed to be doing when he needed to be doing it. My memory is as good as what it used. Tools like that chart. It's a quick glance of what's going on. It would also be something that I could share with you, with the residents or with the employees, so they see not only what we're doing, but what's coming up.
So those types of organizational charts, where do you typically maintain them? Is it kind of a central location? Or is it server? Is it on your hard drive? How do you make that work so that they're immediately accessible by the individuals that need to access them, and that they're always kind of front of mind? So you can have a chart, but if it's stuffed away somewhere in a bookshelf, that's not really doing you much good.
There are two different ways to approach this in my experience, and these are two different approaches that I've taken. If it needs to be an internal only document, things that we don't necessarily want to make public yet, that Excel chart, that Excel spreadsheet would be stored on a central server where everybody can access it. If it is something that can be shared, for example, the upcoming projects and timelines, expected timelines, asterisk, that would be something that we could actually put on the website. But that chart is something that I would use in all of the check-ins with the commission, as well as the check-ins with department heads or town staff. So that way we would need to keep it on that shared drive.
Great. Chris, I appreciate your thorough answers. I don't have any further questions for you right now. But as you've seen, we did save approximately 10 minutes, so we can go back to the other commissioners now and see if there's any follow-up questions, but then also hopefully hear from you if you have any questions for us. So we'll go ahead and start that now, and I'll open it up to any follow-ups that we have. Do we have follow-up questions?
Yes, I have a follow-up. So I was just thinking about this now. I was just mentioning to my fellow commissioner next to me, I read an article the other day about the negative association that people have now with politicians in general, right? This has been a decline. There's a decline chart that shows that the lack of trust that people put in politicians. And this came about, from a commissioner's standpoint. We come here to serve our community, and then you're hit with that reality of that perception, because you're filling up a seat of a politician. So someone said to me, well, that is not a good perception to hold. And so coming as a candidate that currently sits in that position, how do you gain trust? And how do you build that? People don't know you. You're currently, again, you hold a position because that's what you do from the dais. You have a point of view that you defend. You're coming from it to do a completely different job. So how do you gain that trust, and how you battle that perception that you currently hold?
My mantra is trust through transparency. If the people that you serve or the people that you work with have the ability to see exactly what you're doing and what you're planning on doing, they can actually, in their minds, hold you accountable to that. When you do it, it helps build up that trust. When they see a pet project or an important issue or something along those lines on your radar, that builds that trust as well. More importantly, when you come to them and say, I'm sorry, I cannot do this, and here's why. Here are some alternatives. Even though bring them, it also builds up that trust. They understand that you're going to tell them not just what they want to hear, but what the truth is. In doing my research, and Commissioner McDonald or Commissioner Kennedy and I were chatting about that earlier today, there's a lot of wonky stuff that goes on down here in South Florida. Wonky stuff. Maybe that's a Midwest word, I'm sorry. Hanky panky, not hanky panky. Hanky panky, okay. That goes on down here. Sketchy, thank you. Man, that caffeine is messing with me. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, and just looking at some of the articles and some of the analyses, 99% of it would have been uncovered with transparency, knowing exactly what that person is doing.
Thank you. I have a follow-up, but I'll let you guys go so I don't take. Just a quick one. So you sort of mentioned technology, anything that, as you did your research about the village, that you would say this could be a quick win for me. I know exactly what I would do in this situation. For what you've heard, for what you've read and, and seen, maybe there's a technology sort of solution that you could apply that you've already established, in your city, or it could be some sort of a process. What's something that it's a quick win for you?
Two quick hits. The first one would be the online compliment complaint form. Let's find out. Let me back up. In a town this size, it's going to be pretty rare that we get a lot of compliments, complaints, just because folks aren't as here. Will enable us to get our finger on the pulse of what residents are thinking. And the second piece of that is the community. So social media, the online corner, whatever you want to call it, the informal communication piece. And the other thing I think we do is allow residents to submit code and police enforcement requests and concerns online. Online removes that barrier. They no longer have to call. They no longer have to email. They can just go on the website, submit their complaint or complaint or issue, and then we can get it taken.
And one last one, quick, promise.
I'm here all night, so
I
we can
know.
go.
But I don't want to be disrespectful for the rest, but you did ask me a question last time we spoke, and it was, how do you measure my success? And we
Yes.
talked about, and then my suggestion to you was maybe dig into what the performance evaluation was for the manager. Did you have the chance to see that?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm
Chantel.
sorry, I didn't hear the question. I didn't understand.
Okay, so in my interview with Chris, he asked me how would I measure success for him? And I said a good starting point would be to ask the village clerk for our evaluation for manager. Maybe if this commission never saw to it, we never got the chance to even review it and go over it. But that was a good start point. So I was wondering if you actually went on and researched.
Yeah, I reached out and requested that, and I think within an hour I had it back. Your clerk is absolutely phenomenal. My goodness. But that was, I thank you for that suggestion. We're not used to such open communications in Wisconsin as you are down here. But I was able to take a look at what I was less concerned about how you rated Mario, but more with what you're rating him on. And what I saw is pretty standard stuff. Be a good person, do good things for the village.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Kennedy? Oh. Did we lose her? Oh, wait.
She's not there. She is just muted.
First thing I'm going to do is figure out this meeting technology stuff. This is insane.
Sorry, guys, I turned off my video because it was really taking away the audio of being able to hear Chris's answers. So that's why I took that away. I don't have any follow-up question for you, Chris. I did wonder how long will you be in town?
I don't even know my days. I'm flying out on the 8th, Saturday. So I'm here for tonight, all day tomorrow, and then I fly out midday Saturday.
Very cool. Okay, I may reach out to you if I can, if you're going to be around the neighborhood and I could meet you in person. I'd really like that. I'm very sorry that I was not able to be at the log cabin tonight in person. But I really have enjoyed the conversations with you and all the materials that you've presented and your experience. It's all very aligned. So I just really thank you.
Absolutely. My wife has me running around tomorrow looking at different neighborhoods in case I get the position. So anytime that works for you works for me.
Totally understood. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Kennedy?
Yeah, so I have two things. I'm gonna make it three. One of them is more of a comment than a question for you. And I'm glad that Veronica Vero, you asked the question about the manager evaluation because we've never done it very well and we've never done it uniformly. It's something I tried to make happen. So I feel like I have a compatriot in that topic here in front of us. So thank you for bringing that up. And this year, let's do better. So, and just so you know, your first evaluation would have to be by our charter by the end of September. So you would start and get evaluated very quickly, which is great because then you could, we'd have a quick snapshot of how you're doing. So here are the two things I want to ask you. Time to run out and man the pumps. In case you didn't hear that. So you run off and man the pumps and we'll wait.
Is it hurricane
Stay in here where it's dry. This is June to November, so get
Okay.
used to that as well. So I have a question for you. You mentioned something about someone asked you questions about, your municipal work. You're a commissioner like we are. And you said you hired your word crappy manager in Burke. So I'm curious why you hired a crappy manager. And then you specifically said, I think you applied a gender. I think you said it was a he. Was it a he? Why did you hire a crappy manager? How'd you let that happen? And then you said that person missed a deadline for submitting some paperwork. So how were you not holding that person accountable and allow that to happen as a commissioner? Well, you brought it up.
That's totally understandable. So, we have a 5-member board. This is the first time 4 of us had gone through the recruitment, the search, the recruitment, the interview and the hiring process. We put more weight into reference checks and, we put more weight than we spent less. My state job, I've done, I don't know how many hundreds of interviews. So I know how the process goes. I know which questions to ask to get to the answer that you really want versus the answer that they think you want. We were unable to follow that process at Burke. It's a little bit different. So relying on nothing but those references and the one interaction we had with a gentleman, he looked great on paper. He presented himself very well in the interview. He had the right answers to the right questions. The references were great. I think the references were great because they wanted to get rid of him and pawn him off on somebody else. So
This is a
we
public
failed.
record reminder. That's him. That's him.
Listening.
Sorry, buddy. It's the truth. We learned a lot from that.
And to missing the
experience.
deadline and to allowing him to miss that deadline. Because it sounded like it might have been a big grant. You made it sound like it was
It was
something.
several $100,000.
Oh,
And our budget is 3 million. So we're talking close to 10%.
Yeah.
The clerk that we have an administrator, clerk, treasurer. The person that we had filling that position had been doing it for years. It was a well-oiled machine. Us board members really didn't have to have much interaction in the daily operations. We didn't have to hold her accountable because she held herself accountable. We were lulled into that sense of, we don't have to worry about it. So when we got the new manager, we failed to set up those expectations and then follow through to do a regular check-in with this person at 30 days, 90 days, and then monitor the progress of the year. That was a mistake that we made. It was a horrible mistake. But I learned a lot from that when it comes to hiring into municipal management.
so I hope that the sort of PS to that would be when we hold you accountable, you would be okay with the idea that we'd be holding you accountable and sitting here in this room and asking questions to make sure things were being done properly.
I would expect you to.
Thank you. Okay. My other question is a personal question to you. You're from small town Wisconsin. I spent a lot of time in your area. I'm sure I've been through Burke. I probably sneezed and missed it as I
Exactly.
drove through. My husband's from Wisconsin, rural Wisconsin, and his sister lived in Madison for many years. And I've been to Madison 1,000 times. You live in a beautiful, beautiful area. I know from personal experience that it could not be more polar opposite than South Florida. if you drew a graph of some kind. South Florida is a different animal altogether. And you and I had this discussion today. You got to see some speeding going on. You got to see a bad crash right off of 125th. And I said, welcome to Miami, get used to this. So, how are you and your wife, because you're coming here without kids, I think you said, or maybe one kid would move with you. How are you going to adapt and what kind of research have you done into what life is really here? And here's why I ask. A lot of people move to Florida, and I know this from personal experience, hiring people that move here from other places. People move to Florida and they don't make it. It chews some people up and spits them out. And some people just, the finances of it kill them because they didn't figure out what they were really dealing with. And some people who come from nicer places, like Midwestern nice, get here and it's really rough and tumble and it chases them out. What research have you done to assure us that you're not going to be one of those people? And how are you going to adapt to this crazy place?
Great question. I fight the Midwest nice stereotype a lot. My wife and I are actually international travelers. We've been to Greece, Italy, Denmark, several South American or Central American countries. We are not, I know this wasn't your intent, but forgive me, but we're not like country bumpkins or anything.
No,
like that.
I wasn't saying.
We had that experience. I also have, as I mentioned, two sisters, mom who live down here. One is in over on the Gulf Coast. I've been following what's going on with Florida politics for a while, following what happens down here. We've had this plan to move down here for several years. Been waiting for the opportunity to do it. I've done the research. Mine can be an extremely scary place. 3 blocks, 4 blocks, 5 blocks that way can be an extremely scary place. I'm a, what's that? Yeah, all around.
It's that way.
Sorry.
That way is Art's house. This way is scary.
That's what I meant, if that's where Art lives. But I teach home and self-defense. I'm an instructor for it. So understanding things to look for, strange place until we get used to it. That's all part of it. My wife doesn't care where we live. We could move into the middle of the worst neighborhood as long as so it's all good. But I have done a ton of research. The cost of living here is insanely expensive. Just to fill you in a little bit, the way property values have worked up by us, we are going to actually sell our home, rent down here for a year or two until we find a place that we really like around this area, and then purchase. But through that process, part of me, we are paying off our existing vehicle loans, we're paying off our mortgage, we're paying off our home equity line of credit. That free income is not to live on in Miami. But if we're able to pay off those additional loans and still keep doing some of the business that I have, I think I shared with you all, I own a business in Wisconsin. I'm having somebody else run that. I'm just going to sit down here and take the profits. But doing all of that, we'll be able to afford a really decent existence down here. I'm not looking for flashy. I don't have to live on Star Island. I don't have a cigarette or cigar boat, or whatever you call those really big things. We someplace simple, someplace nice. And that is one of the things that actually drew me to Biscayne Park, especially after taking the tour today. It is not what I would expect in the middle of Miami. Answer your question?
You did. Thank you very much. And I was not suggesting you were country bumpkin.
No, I know, I know.
And any stretch of imagination. You said that, not me. But I've been to Burke, Wisconsin.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have any other follow-up question? I think we've kind of exceeded that 10 minutes. So if we don't have any other questions, Chris, I'll turn it over to you briefly if you have any questions that you'd like to ask us.
Not at this point, to be honest. You all have been extremely responsive and Shantae has been extremely helpful. I don't have any questions at this point.
Great.
Actually, I do. Where's the best place to get some really good Cuban food?
I think it's gonna be up for debate. Everybody's like, we got
I'm
their own
taking you
answer.
out for some here in about 15 minutes and we can get out of here. So let's get out.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for your presentation, for your willingness to travel down here and meet with us. We've enjoyed it, and I can tell that you put a lot of time and effort into this, and we very much appreciate it. So thank you very much. I'm sure you heard that next steps is we're going to be discussing this at our next regular commission meeting where we're able to discuss it. And the best I can tell you at this point is that we will be in touch and we hope to speak to you again soon.
Absolutely, I understand.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate the opportunity.